What up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. What we're going to be building here today in this video is a system or a tool that will enable you as a salesperson or an independent contractor of some kind to be able to stay on top of your payroll. So whether you're getting paid for sales, or in my case, as an appointment setter for Ion Solar, I'm also getting paid for just getting a person to show up for an appointment. I get paid a base pay for that, and then if they actually decide to go solar, then I get paid a bonus. However your pay structure specifically works, this system, and going through this process of learning how to use Airtable to build this kind of a thing, will enable you with the tools that will enable you to customize it to your specific pay structure, your company, your industry, and so forth, to be able to do all of that and keep track of all of that so that you can see the two sides of the equation, which are what are the results that I'm creating and how much therefore am I earning, what am I supposed to be being paid, and on the flip side of that, which is what am I actually being paid by my company, so that I can compare those two things, make sure that they're in line with each other, and take corrective action if I need to, based on if there are any discrepancies, or even if they're not discrepancies, just knowing how much am I earning, what do I need to do in order to earn this amount of money? Where, if I am owed money, where is that money owed from? At what time frame it's owed from? Just having all of that information in this nice and neat, concise place where it's orderly and it's beautiful. I mean, I love Airtable. That's what we're going for here. So before we dive into actually building it, I want to give you a sneak peek of what it's going to look like. This here is a simplified version of the actual tool that I use as a part-time appointment setter for Ion Solar that takes into account the two things that I just mentioned. So the sits, those are the results that I'm creating, right? Every time somebody actually sits, they show up, I've already gotten a base pay. That's when they show up into the database. I don't put them in here if they've just set an appointment with me and they haven't sat yet, because that's not worth any money, at least in the way that we get paid at Ion Solar. So I only put them in here if they've sat. And then if they actually go solar, then I get a close bonus as well. And so that's taken into account here as well. And then on the flip side, there's also the pay events. So every time I get a paycheck at Ion Solar anyway, it's every Friday. You come in here and you put the date, and then you put the names that are on that check. You put, Barney Freckle, I got paid $50 for him. And then Don Kelp, I got paid $50 and $50 for Digger Trigger. And those were all in the same paycheck here on February 5th. There's actually no just entering a paycheck. I just call it pay events. And then I just enter each name for that date, and then I group it by the date to see the paycheck. So that's just a little bit of a nitpick thing. Disclosure, all the names have been changed for the sake of the privacy of my customers, as well as the pay scale itself. While the process is the same, I do in fact get paid at Ion Solar for getting somebody to show up for an appointment, and then if they go solar, then I get a bonus. The pay scale itself, how much I'm getting paid for those, is not the same as what we actually get paid at Ion Solar, because I want to protect their privacy as well. So I've just created dummy numbers, dummy data, just for sake of demonstration. Another thing that I'll mention here just quickly before we get into building this thing, if you are watching this from Ion Solar specifically and you want to see how to incorporate this, not just for the way that not just how far I've taken it here, where you get paid for a sit and then you get paid a bonus for it if it closes, but you also want to take into account that tier bonus thing where you get paid a certain amount for the close for 4 or less, and then 5 or more, and then 10 or more, and it goes up like that. If you want to take into account that, just leave me a comment. I can build that into future videos. I just felt it was a little bit too complex to go into here in this introduction video. But just leave me a comment if you want to see that, and I'll be happy to build it for you. So without further ado, let's get started and start building this thing. All right, so you have signed up for your free Airtable account. You've come in here and you've started from scratch your new table, and you're ready to go. So the first thing we're going to do, as always, is label, just to know what types of data are going where, and to just have that notation. So first thing I'm going to do is have the date. Let's actually start by labeling this. So this is, whoops, not sats, sits. These are my sits. This is the type. This is the data where I'm getting paid on these events. Every time something comes in here, it means that this thing has happened and I'm getting paid for that thing. And sometimes there's additional things that happen. We can track that alongside. But so I want to know what date did that happen, whether or not it closed in my case. And I'm going to do a number in this case just to make it easier to enter. And then the rest of them are just going to be formulas, and all of the rest of it will be either calculated or looked up from the other table that we're going to create. So before we get there though, let's enter in our data to make it easier to see. So we can now come over here to this other table. We're going to call this one pay events and start kind of working on the labels and stuff in here. So this one, I'm going to want the date that I was paid on whatever pay event in question and how much was paid on that particular customer. And that would be a currency. And there you go. So, excuse me. So now, what we want now is this one is going to be a name field, but it's not going to be a single text where I just type in the name. I actually want it to be a linked record field. And what that means is that Airtable is going to understand this table does not exist in isolation. It's actually related to this table over here. This is one of the most powerful features of Airtable. It's one of the biggest reasons to use Airtable as opposed to something like Excel, where Airtable looks at these two tables not as existing separate from each other, but they're related in some way. And the data that's in them is related in some way, and that's exactly the case in the field in the application we're talking about here. What I want it to be able to do is every time I come into my payroll database here, I'm entering and enter data as enter this side of the data where I'm getting paid on an event. It's always the case that I'm getting paid on a name from over here, right? Because if it's not in this field over here, then I'm not ever going to be paid for it. I'm not going to get paid for it unless an event has occurred that means I've earned money, and then I get paid later for that. If you get paid ahead of time, I can't help you. But if you get paid after you've earned the money, then you know that's what is going on here. So then what that means is we're going to come in here to look up to the linked record field. This one. And we're going to do link to another record, and we want to say this one is the one we're linking to. That's the only other table in the database. This here, allow linking to multiple records. Sometimes that'll be the case. There's not really a hard and fast rule for when it applies and when it doesn't, but for this case, it does not make sense because each pay event is only going to relate to one customer. If we try to do 2 or more customers per pay event, it'd probably make more sense just to separate those two into 2 different pay events so that I have one pay event for this customer and another one for this customer. That's why we do per customer and not per paycheck. So we're going to do that because if we try to do it per paycheck, then there would be multiple names on a paycheck, and that would just not, it wouldn't, then we'd have to do a different type of data for SITs, and I don't know how you would do that. So anyway, we're going to not do multiple records. Don't worry about the lookup field for now. So now I want this to be name, but we can't do that as long as this is called name. So let's change this to pay event. And this one we're going to call name. And now what you can do is you can fill in this data using the data that we've already filled in for the other tab. So we have Jane Doe for this first one. Let's go ahead and enter all this data in. Perfect. So this is all of the data that you're going to be entering manually every time you come in here with a new paycheck or a new earnings event, right? Like if a customer sits, then they're going to come in here and you're going to enter in this data manually, and whether they closed or not manually. And then on this flip side, this is when you actually get paid on those customers. You're going to come in here to the name field. You're going to come to the field here, and you're going to just add the plus sign. And you can, you could type it if you want. You can start typing, and it'll look it up what fields or what customers are already in here, because like I said, they're not going to be showing up on this side of the table or this side of the database if they're not already on this side, because you wouldn't be getting paid on them if you hadn't already had them over on this side. So then you're going to be entering the date manually and the dollar amount manually. Now the last thing that we need on this side of the database before going on and finishing it with the formulas and stuff over here is the unique identifier, which is a very important part of every database, where you have the very first field identifying uniquely, as the name implies, what that particular record is. And so in my case, for this particular database and this table in the database, what I want is I want this, let's just show you with this example that I have over here. What I want is the name itself that was paid on the account combined with the date that it was paid on. And for me, that's unique enough to know, okay, that's what that pay event was. It was Jane Doe paid on January 22nd of 2021. So what we're gonna do in order to accomplish that is we're gonna use a formula, and it's called the concatenate formula, and it does exactly that. It merges things together so you can see. So you're gonna come into formula, concatenate, it merges two or more fields together so you can see it as you wish. So we're going to say name. All right, so I just copy and pasted just to not make any mistakes. What this means is I want to take the name field, whatever's in there, comma, dash, just for notation, and then comma, date, time, format, date, month, day, year. That's the notation that I want. That's the formatting that I'd like. You can change this if you wish. The Airtable website will have more information on that to customize it to your liking. And once you got that in place, you click save, and now as a formula, just like we wanted, got everything taken care of. So this side of the database is done. We're all the way through. So now all we got to do now is calculate the formulas that we want to know. So let's go ahead and hide this field right here because we don't need to see it. All this really means is that for each name, these are the paychecks that we got. You know, Jimmy Stewart got paid on February 12th. Jimmy Stewart got paid on March 12th. That's all it means. That's all. The data is there, and we need that relationship to be there in the database to be able to work on the back end. And you'll see why here in just a second. But we don't need to see it. So we're going to go ahead and right-click this, and we're going to go down here to hide field because we don't. It doesn't matter to us on the front end anyway. But in order to do, well, let's not go there yet, just yet. So what we want to do, right, is we want to start calculating what are these things worth, because that's what we're calculating on this side. How much are we earning as opposed to how much we're getting paid? So we're going to say, first thing is we're getting paid just for having a name on this side of the database entered in here means that I've gotten paid a certain amount because that's the nature of my payroll in my particular case. And in this case, it's $50. So we're going to say 50 bucks is my sit pay. The next thing is called close pay. That's the bonus that I get if it closes. And that one is that one will only be the amount that I'm looking for, which is 200, if this number in this field is 1, okay, right? So just like in Excel, you're going to do an if function, and you just look up, you want to say if the closed field is equal to 1, then yes, I want that $200, right? But if it's not, then just leave it blank or leave it at 0. So there you go. That's the sit pay and the close pay. And so there you go. The total earned then is the next logical step. And it's very easy. You just add those two things together. And you're good to go. So now what we want to be able to do, the kind of grand finale of this whole shebang, the reason why we're doing this, is we want to see for each name in here, we want to now know, okay, Jane Doe I've earned $50 on, right? How much have I been paid by my company based on this data over here, the paychecks that I'm entering on a regular basis? Based on that, how much have I been paid on Jane Doe, that particular account? And then, you know, from there, you can see those two numbers, the difference then being how much am I still owed, if any. So the first thing that we need, well, what we want is, the first thing that we want is the formula for calculating how much I've been paid on Jane Doe. But before we can get there, we actually need a lookup field. And that's what Airtable was asking us about earlier. A lookup field can only exist if you've linked the records already, and we've already done that. And so that's why I said this whole hidden field thing. You know, it's very necessary that it's in here, but we don't necessarily need to see it. So we have the pay events. That's the only other table that we can look into, and that's the one that we want. And what we want to pull for each name in this, for each name in here, is the amount that was paid on that name. And so the amounts that were paid on that name. And so what Airtable is doing is it's looking at each name that are linked over here, right? Because we've been entering them appropriately. And for each one, it's going to list every single time and every number that was paid on that particular name. So this one is the only one with both. That's because Jimmy Stewart has 2 records over here and they're both entered. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. That is then what's going to enable us to do this one, which is the amount that's been paid on that name, right? The total amount. And all we need to do, very intuitive, we just need a sum formula to sum that field, amount paid from pay events. And there you go. Last thing then is simply the difference, so that you can know, am I being paid in accordance with what I should be? How much have I earned minus how much have I been paid on that account? And based on that, you can already see, hey, I've earned $250 on Don Kelp because he sold, but I've only been paid $50, and so I'm still owed an additional $200. Perfect. So the last thing that I'll do then is just kind of clean this all up with some formatting. So one thing you might want to do is come to these fields, and you can come over here to formatting and change them to currency, just so it's a little easier to read. You have to do them one by one, unfortunately, which is kind of annoying, but you know, whatever. Another thing that you can do is you can hide, like we've already hidden the one field. I might also hide this amount paid, because I don't really care about that either. So you can hide that. You could, if you want, you could hide sit pay and close pay, since they're added together here for the total earned. So I'll go ahead and do that. Hide this field, hide this field. See, now all of that stuff is still working in the background. Airtable still has it because it needs it. But as far as the information that you care about, this is the only information that you need. And then you can sort this by the date, just to force it to always be in order. That way, if you enter a name that actually sat, let's say, on like January 17th, then it'll automatically come back over here, and it'll always be in that correct order for you. And then back on this tab, what you can do in addition to sorting is you can actually group these together by the paycheck. So see here, the February 5th, these are all on one paycheck. And so if I want to see that one paycheck and how much was on that paycheck, as this gets more complicated over time, you can do what's called grouping by the appropriate field, which in this case is date. And now you can see for each paycheck, the sum is already automatically calculated for you for each paycheck. And that's pretty much it, guys. Really hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got value out of it. If you did, don't forget to like the video. And if you want to see additional Airtable applications, if there was something that was not clear, or if you're, I don't know, have some sort of other custom request, just leave me a comment in the comment and I'll get back to you. We'll make some more videos like this in the future. So appreciate you stopping by. We'll see you next week.